Boring. Wow.
Tough crowd. It's a tough crowd.
Thank you. I woke up this morning and read my Twitter, as I always do, and it occurred to me that the best thing that we could do to support digital journalism and sell more subscriptions here in America would be to re-elect Donald Trump to a second, third, and a fourth term as president. I'm Jim Friedlich, and I run the Lenfest Institute. As Jim Moroney said, we are the parent company of the Philadelphia Inquirer. We're a not-for-profit. Our mission is to help support new models for sustainable journalism. We're the largest owner of a public benefit corporation operating as a newspaper in America. And the goal is to use the Philadelphia Inquirer as a test lab for the transformation of journalism in America. And we think that user revenues and digital subscriptions and community support are absolutely integral to that, including philanthropic support. I'm here with a very positive set of messages and a handful of examples about the future of journalism, and particularly the role of the user and the reader in that. I wanted to talk briefly about three ways in which media consumers, and I mean media consumers writ large, not only consumers of news, are increasing their spending and the quality of their time and commitment to great content, which bodes well for great journalism. I'll start as Jim Moroney did with kind of a macro view, but I think a more positive one, or the other side of the coin. Jim talked about the decline of advertising, or the aggregation of advertising firepower within a handful of major companies. That's absolutely true. I think we are in a post-advertising era, at least for the news business. But the user-funded media is actually booming, and that's something that we can take advantage of. The total global spend on media and entertainment, according to Bain last year, was $750 billion. This is, to be clear, TV, digital, movies, games, mobile, radio, print, digital subscriptions, every ticket to Hamilton, absolutely everything. Hamilton was probably about half of that. But, the consumer share of that, $750 billion, and that itself is growing. The consumer share was 40% in 2000. It was 50% in 2010, and it was 65% last year. That's a shift of hundreds of billions of dollars to consumers paying for content that they love. The biggest piece of this, to be sure, is video. It's Netflix, it's Hulu, on-demand TV, cable subs, sports tickets. The trend also includes Pandora, Spotify, iTunes, but it also includes subscriptions to great journalism. The fastest growers were, am I touching this thing here? Sorry. They're not so boring, huh? I'm going to show you David Perpich's slides before I'm through. The same trend, the same wind in the sails is affecting the New York Times, David, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, which has been selling digital subscriptions for many, many years. So it's important, and I think very, very encouraging, to recognize that asking readers to pay for stuff that they love and find important is part of a much, much bigger trend, and that trend is quite a positive one. It's very, very good news for good news, which is the business that we're in. The second trend I wanted to cite briefly is that of communities, and communities are groups of engaged users supporting their most cherished journalism in a direct and positive way with user payments large and small. I see John Thornton sitting in the second row here. We're here in the hometown of the great Texas Tribune, and the Texas Tribune gets at least half of its income from users, either through events like the festival, or from direct membership and payments, and from philanthropy, and from foundations. This is a form of user payment, and something that we should take greater and greater advantage of. I say that as the head of a nonprofit that supports a great American newspaper. But two quick examples, and both of these are from yesterday. There's a site called Berkeley Site, which is the Berkeley, California community website. It announced something yesterday called a direct public offering. They raised $1 million from 355 community members That's about $3,000 a piece. And the direct public offering was modeled on, of all things, the sale of stock by the Green Bay Packers. For those of you who are not U.S. natives, the Green Bay Packers is the only NFL team owned by its community. And they've sold stock over the years to the people of Green Bay. Why not do that for news? It seems to have worked quite effectively. The second, I think many of you would have seen a quite impassioned editorial from the Denver Post over the weekend. Who read this? So that's about half of you. The Denver Post is owned by a New York-based hedge fund called Alden Capital. It has cut its newsroom from 250 people to 100 as of a couple of months ago. They were just ordered to cut another 35 people. So the largest newspaper in the state of Colorado will have 65 people in its newsroom before long. And the newsroom, the editorial page, actually rose up and rebelled and wrote a story, or wrote an opinion piece saying, as the vultures circle, who will save the Denver Post? They cried out to the community and asked for support. We heard about this through Twitter and other means, but they've reached out to us, and investors have reached out to us, looking at our model and our structure for the city of Philadelphia. Yesterday, they reported that they had soft-circled $10 million of local support to try to buy the newspaper. Whether Alden chooses to sell, whether the community is a high bidder versus a Gatehouse or a Gannett or others who might have deeper pockets, I don't know. But this is a form of getting the community who believe in your mission, believe in your content, to pay. And I think that's another piece of good news for journalism, and I think we'll see more of it. The third trend is a proliferation of really creative new payment models that give both software enablement and new ways for users to engage in journalism. I'm going to mention three, one called the News Revenue Hub, one called Scroll, and one called Pactio. Just briefly, the News Revenue Hub grew out of the Voice of San Diego, which appealed to its users to pay whatever they thought they should pay and whatever they thought was fair to become members of the Voice of San Diego. The content is free. You don't need to pay for it. It's like NPR. It's optional. They also did not put a price on it. They said, whatever you think this is worth to you. They've raised over $1 million a year using these methodologies. And they've taken that activity on the road and a kind of light tech stack called the News Revenue Hub, and they've been helpful to dozens of publications around the country. The second, Scroll, was started by Tony Hale, who you might know as the founder of Chartbeat, and a colleague who came out of Spotify, of all places. And they've described this as Netflix for news, or TSA pre-check for news. The idea is a subscriber pays $5 for an all-you-can-eat pass to a collection of member publications. There's a small investment from the New York Times. There's investment from Axel Springer. There's a serious group of high-value investors involved. And the notion is, for the $5 a month, you get an advertising light or advertising free experience, all you can eat. Those dollars are allocated to the news properties based upon the usage, which is how Netflix works. The third, Pactio, is a raw startup by Adriano Ferrano, who's an Italian entrepreneur based in Silicon Valley. And this is kind of Patreon for journalists. Individual journalists are on the platform and can charge, can get legal services, can engage with their users directly. And this grew out of a collection of San Jose Mercury News journalists who said, I've just been laid off, but my community still cares about me. I still want to cover Sunnyvale. I still want to cover San Jose. Each of these three is a creative idea and a software-enabled idea, and they all borrow from other parts of the payment ecosystem. I want to close quickly with a thought about some work we're doing at the Lenfest Institute together with partners at the Knight Foundation, with API, with Democracy Fund, and a collection of for-profit newspapers like the Dallas Morning News. to help publishers build digital subscriptions. Our experience in this area suggests that there really are two dimensions that matter, and you need both. One is mission and a strong sense that democracy dies in darkness, as the Washington Post says, that your community should care about the content that you produce, and you should create content that they should care about. The second is kind of the hard work, but not rocket science, of best practices in metering your readers, in asking them to pay, in putting prices in front of them that are palatable, et cetera. There are a collection of best practices that we've calibrated, that we've quantified, and we're trying to share in any way that we can, and we'd love to do so with you. There's a site called the Better News Hub, which is API's site that collects a lot of this work. They've done terrific work on subscriptions. There is an ongoing collection of workshops that we are helping lead, and that's led by Boston's own Tim Griggs on behalf of the Lenfest Institute, paid for by, of all people, the Facebook Journalism Project. This brings together 14 major metros. We started 2 weeks ago to compare best practices. So we can look at why Boston's emails work better than Philadelphia's. We can look at why the Dallas Morning News has done such a great job of engaging through Facebook and creating Facebook groups and converting them to subscribers. It's absolutely hands-on, how-to, and it's completely transparent in the public interest. All of this is being blogged about on our site and on the Facebook site in a great deal of detail. So with all of that, plus a few more years of Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels, not boring, we'll sell millions and millions of digital subscriptions. I wanted to close with a personal thanks to Jim Maroney, who, when I was building a business called Empirical Media, whose passion and mission was to help transform news media companies to a sustainable future through a lot of these kinds of methods, was my biggest supporter, our biggest client, and that business was acquired by Jerry Lenfest, who started the Lenfest Institute and became my work and my passion today. So thank you, Jim Maroney, and thank you all.